Yes, let's talk about hockey, the show that journeys through the history of the sport of ice hockey from its disputed origins to the game we see today. Aside from the addition of the Vancouver Canucks in the NHL's second expansion for the 1970-71 season, the league also tacked on another team to its ranks, but on the eastern portion of the continent, the Buffalo Sabres. Though already home to the successful Buffalo Bisons of the American Hockey League, in order to make way for the new NHL club, the Bisons folded following winning their fifth Calder Cup in the 1969-70 season. Wanting something other than the Bison team name, the new NHL franchise opened things up to the public with a Name the Team contest. The name Sabres was selected from the entries because owner Seymour Knox felt that a saber, a weapon carried by a leader, could be used effectively on both offense and defense. Former Maple Leafs coach Punch Imlach was then brought in to serve as both the team's head coach and its general manager, and thanks to a lucky roulette wheel spin, Buffalo ended up with the first overall pick in the 1970 amateur draft, which they used to select Montreal Junior Canadiens star center Gilbert Perreault. After all other preparations were set, the puck dropped for Buffalo's first game on October 10, 1970 in Pittsburgh. The Sabres would play to a 2-1 victory over the Penguins in this first game, and over the course of the season, their top draft pick, Gilbert Perreault, would net 38 goals and earn the Calder Trophy for being named Rookie of the Year. However, Buffalo still only finished ranked 5th in the East Division, a good 19 points out of a playoff spot. In the team's second season, Perreault would receive some help, as he was paired with Buffalo's latest first-round draft pick, Rick Martin. Martin would top Perreault's record by netting 44 goals in his rookie year, and Perreault himself would total 74 points, but once again the Sabres failed to make the playoffs. However, for the 1972-73 season, these two would be joined by a late-season acquisition from the previous year named René Robert. In homage to their French-Canadian heritage and playing off a popular movie title, this new line for Buffalo was dubbed the French Connection. Together, these three would rack up 236 points during the year and lead Buffalo into the playoffs with a fourth-place finish in the Eastern Division. Unfortunately, the Sabres would be bumped off by their first-round opponent and the eventual Stanley Cup champions, the Montreal Canadiens, after a 6-game series. In February of 1974, the Sabres would suffer a tragedy when 44-year-old defenseman Tim Horton was killed in a car accident while driving alone back to Buffalo from Toronto after a game against the Maple Leafs. This incident added more salt to an already troubled season. Despite Rick Martin scoring a team record 52 goals and the French Connection combining for 202 points during the year, the Sabres finished 10 points out of a playoff spot. For the 1974-75 season, though, Buffalo bounced back in a big way. Behind the French Connection's 291 combined points and the goaltending duo of Roger Crozier and Gary Bromley, the Sabres finished the regular season in a 3-way tie with Philadelphia and Montreal for the top spot in the league. Because of their record, Buffalo bypassed the preliminary round and went straight to the quarterfinals to face Chicago. The Sabres made quick work of the Blackhawks, outscoring them 20-10 to knock them off after 5 games. With their club's first ever playoff series victory under their belt, Buffalo next squared off against the Canadiens, one of the 2 teams to tie Buffalo as the NHL's best during the regular season. Following a 6-5 overtime victory in Game 1, Buffalo also snagged a win in Game 2 to take a commanding lead in the series. However, Montreal would decimate the Sabres in Games 3 and 4 by 7-0 and 8-2 scores respectively. Returning home for Game 5, Buffalo was able to hold on for a 5-2 win thanks to a René Robert overtime tally. Then for Game 6 in Montreal, the Sabres netted 3 goals in the first period and withstood a third-period Montreal rally to clinch the series with a 4-3 win, earning themselves a ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time. In the finals, Buffalo faced the other team to tie them in regular season points, the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Philadelphia Flyers. During the first 2 games in Philly, the Sabres only managed to score 2 goals to the Flyers' 6. Back in Buffalo and down 2-0 in the series, things took a turn for the unusual in Game 3. Due to the abnormal heat in Buffalo and the lack of air conditioning in the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium, portions of the game were played in heavy fog. Visibility became so bad that during pauses in play, rink employees skated around the arena ice carrying bed sheets in an attempt to dissipate the fog. Later, during a face-off, Sabres center Jim Lorentz spotted a bat flying across the rink and killed it with his stick, becoming the only player to kill an animal during an NHL game. Circumstances aside, the Sabres were able to cut through the fog enough for a 5-4 overtime win. Then they followed that up with a 4-2 win in Game 4 to even the series at 2. Unfortunately, Philly's goaltender Bernie Parent shut down Buffalo's offense during the next 2 games, allowing only a single goal to end Buffalo's run and return the Stanley Cup to Philadelphia. After their defeat at the hands of the Flyers, the Sabres entered the 1975-76 season looking to build upon their success from the previous year. In addition to the French Connection's 286 combined points, winger Danny Gare also put up a 50-goal performance for Buffalo that year as the club finished second in their division. Back in the playoffs for a second consecutive year, the Sabres started their run by knocking off the Blues after a 3-game preliminary round series. However, their hopes of making it back to the finals were dashed in the next round when the New York Islanders dispatched them in 6 games. Over the next 3 years, Buffalo would maintain their spot in the Adams division, finishing in second place each year. But when it came to the playoffs, they were never able to get any farther than the quarterfinal round. In the 1979-80 season, despite breaking up the French Connection line by trading René Robert to the Colorado Rockies, Buffalo would finally achieve a first-place finish in both their division and their conference. Thanks to standout performances by Danny Gare, who led the NHL with 56 goals, defenseman Jim Schoenfeld, who had the best plus-minus rating in the NHL, and the goaltending tandem of Don Edwards and Bob Sauvé, who shared the Vezina Trophy for allowing the fewest goals against. Entering the playoffs as the second-ranked team in the league, the Sabres were matched against the Canucks for the best-of-5 preliminary round. Buffalo would take the first 2 games at home before finishing Vancouver off in Game 4 on the road. In the quarterfinals round, Buffalo would roll past Chicago in a 4-game sweep where the Sabres outscored the Blackhawks 16-7. Then in the third round of playoff action, Buffalo was matched against another young team that had put together an impressive playoff run, the New York Islanders. The Islanders would take the first 3 games of the series to push Buffalo to the brink. However, the Sabres mounted a comeback, winning the next 2 games by scores of 7-4 and 2-0. Unfortunately, though, the Islanders were finally able to deal the Sabres a loss in Game 6 by a score of 5-2 to put an end to Buffalo's season. This would be the last deep playoff run the Sabres would put together until the late 90s. And to this day, despite making it back to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1999, Buffalo is still chasing after their first Stanley Cup title.